Welcome to Thicc Boy Fight Club. I'm your bulking boy, Boyan.
I'm Andrew the Beast Tyson, and today we got our guy, Adam Lecker, Fascial Training System Specialist out of Anatomy Lab 6. Basically the guy who's been strength and conditioning for me and Boyan for the last year or so, and has literally changed my life in terms of how I train.
Yeah, absolutely. He's changed the way I train, and I'm feeling great. And we just had a great session. But before we dig into it, I just want to give a shout out to our sponsors, Kangen Water. You know, Michael, Mr. Easy, thank you for hooking us up. This water is, change your water, change your life.
Kangen for life.
Kangen for life. Kangen Gang, Thicc Gang. And, as for local restaurants, this week I want to shout out Spartan Greek Grill in Brampton. They hooked me up with some excellent chicken souvlaki last night, and small local spot up in Brampton, open late. They got beef gyros, chicken souvlaki, great spot. Tyson?
My Thicc Boy meal this week was Sunrise Caribbean in Mississauga. Great jerk chicken. They're on Uber Eats. They're one of the few places in Uber Eats that still delivers beef patties. That was how I found them. I couldn't I gave it a shout, and they deserve it, right? Love that spot. So you can get your beef patties. Also, we want to shout Major Pack out of Kansas City.
Yeah, we major.
Anything cannabis related, those are your guys. Go check them out. Adam, who's your Thicc Boy spot of the week that you were enjoying?
My Thicc Boy spot of the week this week was Rancho Relaxo.
Ooh, good one.
In Etobicoke. Their jerk chicken tacos are really the only move.
Jerk chicken tacos. If you're not from Toronto, just know that it's very rare you're going to find a spot that has jerk chicken tacos.
Yeah.
If you want to know why we love this city and why we talk, that's the type of stuff you find.
The fusion of food and cultures. Yeah.
Meal.
Yeah, it's as Toronto as it gets. Jerk chicken tacos.
They're nothing like traditional Mexican tacos. My wife is Mexican, and I love traditional Mexican tacos, but this week
you gotta mix it up, man.
Yeah,
Toronto's all about the mix.
It's all about mixing it up. We're blessed to live
we're a city
with
full
all
of
this food.
We're a city full of mixed people, mixed food. So big shout out to that. But on to what we were talking about. So Adam, kind of give everybody a background, your how you started into fitness and the path that, because I think that's one of the most interesting parts of your story is where you started and what you were known for to where you ended up now.
Absolutely. Well, I've been doing this quite a while. So I've been in the business for about 20 years. I've been in the health and fitness business. And I started off kind of traditionally like the majority of us, kind of bodybuilding and, training the body the way that we were taught to. Making all the muscles stronger and then
aesthetics.
And that was going to make us look good. And then, after years of that I was actually a fat kid when I was young, and I had trouble burning calories without really dieting. And I didn't think that just didn't feel right to me. I was like, why do I have to starve myself to get results in this game kind of thing? You know? Excuse me. And also too, I found that I kind of lost the athleticism that I had when I was a kid. When I first started into athletics, I was in martial arts, and that was when I was really young, and then through sports, tennis and hockey.
Which martial art did you do?
I did Kempo karate, so I did that.
One of the originals.
Yeah, it was a very, and it's interesting how a lot of the things now that I look back that I learned then kind of translate into what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
Into this next level that we've reached here. I think that's why it goes so well with combat sport, because it's kind of built around similar modalities from Eastern philosophies, shall we say.
Well, funny thing is, so we met through our guy Max at Lululemon at an event, and what's kind of funny about his story is when he was talking about the functional training, me and you had already kind of gotten away from traditional heavy lifting, and we were just kind of trying to find our way. We were doing kettlebells.
Yeah, kettlebells. It was definitely better than what we were doing before.
Yeah, we felt better, but I was still getting massages every week. And I remember meeting you and you showing the steel mace stuff, and I was like, okay, this is the next level. And one thing I always tell people about you is I remember you showed me a picture when you used to bodybuild, and I mean, don't take this the wrong way, but from an aesthetic standpoint, you looked better. You were ripped, jacked. But I remember you saying I felt like shit. I remember that's one thing that really stuck with me was that this picture's awesome and you're enjoying it, but the pain I was going through that month just for this one little clip that somebody likes isn't worth it. And that really clicked with me.
It was after I transitioned out of bodybuilding, I did a bunch of years in Olympic weightlifting because that became the
new way
to do it. And actually,
and that's better than weightlifting.
At the time, it felt more athletic, right? Right, like the concept that I was like sitting down to work out as an athlete, it didn't feel like I was working out. And I don't want to thrash anybody's form of training. Like whatever you choose,
whatever makes you feel good. We support all bodybuilders. We got mad bodybuilders on the team.
Love to just everybody out there. Whatever you choose to do, that's your choice. I just want people to choose from an educated perspective as opposed from an ignorant perspective. No offense, of course.
But why are you doing it?
Because I've been through that stage, and so I did the bodybuilding, I did the weightlifting, and I really wanted to become versed in it. I really studied things hard, and I studied the human body the way that we were taught, years ago, and it still just didn't yield the results that I was looking for. And then I found a new perspective after I went down to Austin, Texas, and I trained at the Onnit Academy.
Yep.
And the Onnit Academy was my first, parlay into, functional training. And it was a great start. It was an excellent start. And it really got me thinking about the human body. And I have to give them a lot of credit that their education system there is done by a Canadian guy named Shane Hines. And he really, 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 put some good curriculum together.
Well, yeah, and I followed all those guys. Like, everyone who follows Joe Rogan, Jocko Willick's, Primal Soldier. It was the same thing. It was just kind of like a parlay into realizing that, okay, I don't have to do heavy lifting.
Yeah, it just felt right when I met you.
It just felt better.
It was
to start doing this stuff.
Yeah.
And I had done some study in movement-based training when actually there's a tool that came out called the Viper. It came out like 10 years ago. And when I found that, I really thought like movement training made sense, like instead of just standing in one place.
Yeah.
And so
I remember what you said to me one time is like we're not lifters, we're movers. And that really stuck with me. And
to this day.
It's like because fighting, I'm moving my opponent, I'm moving myself. I'm not really lifting anyone. Even when I'm taking someone down and picking them up, I'm moving them. Like there's no lifting involved.
It's a really big difference that a lot of people are unaware of, and that's because, we only think about using what's called vertical force vectors or picking up things, right? Like a weight or a barbell or something like that. And we stand in one place, we pick it up, and then we put it down. And, excuse me, that can develop a certain amount of strength, but that kind of strength doesn't apply when you got to pick it up and move it, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, like it's a totally different action. And so once you start moving things, you introduce what are called horizontal force vectors. And so that's kind of what our system is based on is training in multiple force vectors because especially in combat athletics, your opponent isn't dead weight. They're pushing back, pulling back, probably trying to punch you in the face.
They're trying to move, and wrestling, any sport.
Move you. Yeah,
and that's not even fighting. Soccer, if you're trying to move around a guy, same thing. Football.
Literally moving in reality, this reality as a human being, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And
you fixed the way I walk. You fixed my posture. I'm literally taller.
That's some people notice that they say you look taller because of our posture.
So
and so that's kind of where there's two aspects to our system. And so the first, there has to be some sort of like corrective things done because, we've fallen into certain, when Boyan, when you and I met, you didn't have the same posture. You were hunched over a little bit more. And so we had to really focus on fixing.
Yeah, and that's years of boxing like this. But now I'm even realizing that boxing with my, like you said, the scapula retracted. Like the way you see
power.
Connor is just like, and I'm seeing it in my shots when I'm lining up my straight shots. Like there's just so much more power, and I'm realizing, the secret of generating more knockout power, getting more punching power, it's really in just creating better biomechanics.
Well,
when I translate my body better like an elastic band, that's when I'm hitting harder. And I'm doing this stuff because like I get to do it in like it's in your lab, the Anatomy 6 lab, and then I go take it in sparring in boxing or in wrestling, and I find how well it does. Right, do it in jiu-jitsu, and I have guys tell me, man, you feel stronger. Are you lifting? You know what I mean? Are you lifting? And I'm like, are you on steroids? And
I literally have people
think
that I promote your training and promote functional, and then like when nobody's around, we're like right,
you're just like doing bicep curls and just like,
yes, nobody's around, like, and they swear we're lying, and it's like I'm losing weight and feel stronger to guys who I know are lifting, guys like that's what really, because I feel like for you, This is why we try to get you in the martial arts world. I feel like it's hard to get people who come from, let's say, the bodybuilding world or the power to really understand what you're saying. For us, we get to go against other freak athletes, and when they tell us how strong we feel and ask us if we're lifting, that's all I need to know that I was on the right path. For most people, it's probably hard to get them to see what you're saying, because
it's working against guys that that you see like in their stories, they're squatting, they're deadlifting, they're doing all this work,
they're strong,
but they're like breaking themselves down, and they're only strong in like the first exchange, and it doesn't translate into the continued session.
And a lot of guys we train with are gonna feel like this.
I'm not attacking guys. About all of
we're
just trying
you all know who you are, right? But you've heard our response to it, and like I said, we expect to have more of you guys specifically on here that we've been trying to transition. And you know, like I said, that was the thing that really did it for me, is when I would go places and people tell me how strong I felt, and I was like, I haven't picked up a weight in like a year. But
I've picked up a mace.
Yeah, I haven't been doing any strict lifting, and I'm losing weight, feeling stronger. You know how we get down diet wise, so nobody can say we're out here eating the best food all the way. Like we think
balance. We eat a lot of healthy food, but we like to think easy, train hard.
Me, so like, what's it been like? Because shout out to our boy Tyler, who I actually train boxing, who said like, you used to be the guy who was like, squat every day. Squat every day. And then he said you like helped him finish his squat, and then he said like after a month of having a perfect squat, you're like, squatting's bad. And he was like,
well, it really started with just an extended study of the human body. And so once we move past the muscular system and we start studying the fascial system,
and
it's a whole different perspective.
This is the sauce right here.
And this is the thing that makes it very hard for some people to kind of comprehend, because currently it's very early on in the discovery of the fascial system. So there's several fascial departments at like Harvard and Stanford and SoCal, but and then in Europe also. But this information really isn't taught at the university level yet. The curriculum hasn't changed yet. So, you really have to seek out this information after. And so that was kind of like what I ended up doing for the last like 3 years. Is the only thing that I've studied is the human fascial system.
Yeah.
And a lot of this came from like trial and error, because I saw things that I thought would work, but I didn't really know anyone that had done it. So like, actually, Tyson, you were one of my first real guinea pigs.
No, I remember you telling me that, yeah.
And I mean, that was, now we're going on like about a year and a half ago where we started this.
I felt better than ever. I tell to guys all the time.
I thought it was theory.
And you ain't exactly a spring chicken,
Dude,
listen, that was the other thing too. Is like, I was like, okay, he's not 25, he's 35.
So people to get my background, I'm 36 years old. I played football in the States, wrestled, grew up lifting the whole time. The biggest I ever got before fighting, I was a 200 pounds, and it was from lifting. I had an injury and I kind of got fat, but then I've had 11 amateur fights, 5 pro fights, knee surgery, ACL, meniscus, LCL. Like, I am by no means the person that you can use as an example, though. Because you can say, oh well, lifting can get a guy jacked and then it can hurt him later on. If this training didn't work, it would have already messed me up. And when I'm going against these young killers, a lot of the guys who are going to watch this, you guys know who you are, right? A lot of these guys who've never had surgeries, 25, 28, they don't believe I don't lift. And so if you can do this for a guy like me, a lot of these young athletes, man, like, don't wait till you get that knee injury to realize I shouldn't be squatting so much.
You really helped me with that comeback, Like I've had double ACL and a meniscus surgery.
2 ACLs, man.
And I've had the best stretch of my career after that, when I started working with you, even just a little.
I feel stronger than ever.
Trinidad cuff, when I won that title, that was coming off of the second ACL surgery after like 16-month operation, and doing things with you really helped.
Yeah, so even with the Trinidad thing, right? Like, we had just kind of started again the sauce. Like, I was.
Yeah,
you would
it
give
was
me
just
stuff,
the beginning. You weren't even on the level that you are now.
And I was giving him the training, and I didn't even have all the cues. But you know what I think you also brought up was that, like, because you weren't trying to add in this heavy weightlifting program where, like, all right, Wednesdays and Thursdays, you were talking about how just better you felt throughout the camp. So it wasn't even just about how much more athletic you were making us. I felt like I just wasn't breaking myself down. Like, simply the ending of the lifting was, I just felt better all week. It was just huge difference.
It's quite shocking because the system actually kind of combines therapy and training in one.
I know, it feels like physio when I come to your days and a workout at the same time.
What I'm doing, and they look and they're like, "Oh, that's only physio," and I say to them, "It's physio if you use light weights, but if you use heavy weights, it's strength training."
Oh, so before I ever met you,
that's the whole thing. making the body function optimally. If you want to make it stronger, just add more load. You don't have to change.
Yeah, more resistance, more load.
Change the movements.
Yeah.
Right? Just add more load. When you do it lighter, it's therapy. When you do it heavier, it's strength training.
And when he means by like weight and loads, like I'm talking about like today I did a workout with like a 20-pound mace. And I was like, man, I remember I was like, this is hard. And I usually don't bitch about the workouts, but like that I'm just a 20-pound mace, and I was like,
around. You're not standing still, right? Like you're
first time
swinging this thing around, and it's like, and I feel great after. I feel great now. I can't wait to go train again. You know, whatever it is later tonight, I'm ready to go train. I'm not broken down from like a strength and conditioning session that involves just picking up dead weights.
Well, I remember the first time you handed me like a 15-pound weight. I was like offended. I was like, do you know who I am? What is this? Where's the 100? And like after, like bro. After that session, it was. I'm not gonna name the gym, but we were at a certain place. There's pictures of it, and like you remember how sweaty I looked, and you literally after the train session, like, bro, you look like you've been lifting for 2 hours. Like it was a 15-pound mace, and like the pump I got, the feel I got, but I remember being offended, like how dare he hands me this?
And like
everybody is honestly like whenever I've held small group seminars and stuff. And like a lot of times I get bodybuilders that come in, and there's a few guys that have come in and they were jacked, like super jacked, really strong guys. Some of the strongest guys and most fit guys in Toronto. And they got owned.
Yeah. It's just like jiu-jitsu. It's the same
like
thing.
That's the whole
it's
thing.
the same feeling.
That's why I like it, because it was like a truth bomb when I worked out with it. And I was like, how it showed me like how uncoordinated I really am, and like how I'm not that athletic, and I literally have to like build my.
And this
athleticism.
isn't a knock just to bodybuilders. Like coming from a wrestling background, right? We know wrestlers have gone to the highest peak of MMA. Me and Rory McDonald were just talking about this. It's the same thing when you come in a room as a wrestler or a good athlete, and then, no offense, some guy that looks like Boyan tangles you up like 5 times. You realize like, oh, like these muscles don't mean anything. Like I'm not as dangerous of a man as I thought I was.
You break through the matrix and you find new truths. And that's what I feel like. And I gotta say, I feel bittersweet a little bit even putting you on this podcast, because I feel like you're our secret, and like I don't want to share the secret. I don't want to share the secret weapon, but you know, like you really are the sauce. I really gotta thank you. You know.
Well, I mean, the good athletes are gonna find it anyway. Yeah, the good athletes are gonna find it anyway, and
if you're serious, you're gonna seek them out. That's for sure.
Well, so funny thing about you talking about the therapy thing is this is something that me and you had this conversation before I even met him. I remember when I blew my ACL out, I was doing a bunch of these thermal band things. You know, anybody's rehabbed a knee, it's actually a very painful process. And the woman said, she goes, if you're doing this to recover your knee, why wouldn't you do it while your knee is healthy to stop the injury? Right? She's like, you guys should be doing these things before anyway. And that's what clicked. You're like, she's like, you can just get a harder band when your knee's healthy. Get a tougher band and do these workouts.
Well, you've changed my whole warm up. I've gone from like, I don't really think about stretching anymore. I think about like loosening up my muscles,
stretches,
and like that like foam rolling through and doing through these those animal movements. You know, so much of this stuff overlaps with the truths you've seen before, like Hickson Gracie's gymnastic natural that he called it, right? Like those animal type movements, gymnastic type movements, like. I do those, and I feel way better doing that for a warm-up than I ever did like trying to even do dynamic stretching, where I was like forcing myself into, you know.
That's why I was so happy to be like your first game big, because like remember you weren't a martial artist at all. Like he was a bodybuilder, you were into powerlifting, he wasn't a martial artist, and we'd be in the middle of a session like, oh, this is exactly what I do to pivot with coach to throw a punch, or oh yeah, this is exactly what I do when I'm doing jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, or like to shoot in, like this is the exact position for a takedown, like getting it on the hips on this lunge.
And your whole point was movement's movement. I don't have to know your sport. Like I will find something. You could be whatever. You train with me, and something will click. And that's what, like the whole time it was just clicking. Like, oh, this is how I.
It's because all real movement, if done well, is the fascial system is prioritized.
Well, it's a fact.
So right, like
please.
If you watch even in kung fu, and good athletes always have a center of gravity. If you have a good center of gravity, it means your fascial system is in tune. It means your body finds a center of gravity all the time. Right? And good martial artists are always in that advantage position, and regardless if they're wrestlers also. I studied jiu-jitsu
martial
players and wrestlers specifically for the last 2 years because of the way that they were able to readjust their center of gravity whenever they needed to, whether it was using the ground as leverage or their opponent as leverage.
And finding and being strong in strange positions and those weird.
And shout out to all martial arts, but me and you've had this conversation is, in boxing, kickboxing, you don't have to learn how to move on your back, on your hips. Like, that's not something that's not even in the game, right? It's not. Whereas wrestling and jiu-jitsu, like, you really have to know how to use your body to the fullest extent to be good at either one. You have to learn how to move off your back.
And with that said, how much has he fixed your boxing with the way?
Oh my God,
with the way everything is a rotation and like pulling your shoulders back, and at the same time as stretching forward. Like I literally added like maybe like half an inch or an inch penetration on my punch, but that makes the world of difference when my timing or my range has always been this one thing.
And we're just able to train more. Like every time I had a bad knee, and this isn't a knock to cross-firing things, because when you go to a strength and conditioning coach, a lot of times they're there for what they're there for, to make you big and strong. They're not there for you to then that night go do jiu-jitsu. That's another reason I think in MMA we're still so far behind is at the highest level, you notice boxers don't lift a lot. Boxers kind of already knew that this wasn't good for their sport if you really look at it. Like the Terrence
Haven't you stopped thinking about being bigger or stronger? I just think about being a better athlete now when I'm working.
And with boxing, a lot of times you have one coach that's doing everything. With MMA, our problem was we'd go to a CrossFit guy for our strength and conditioning and then go to a jiu-jitsu guy, and it wasn't lining up. So I'm doing all this stuff that I'm tight and inflammation, and then I'm going to do jiu-jitsu, and like my body was like, no.
Are you in the Toronto area looking to start your own podcast and don't suck? Well, DM me at the link below and check out my own podcast, The PhD Show, at fallondone.com, where you're guaranteed to learn absolutely nothing. Stay thick with it.
So welcome back. Sorry, we had a little intermission there, and we were saying that you'd be happy to debate anybody, right?
100%. I mean,
because
that's the way we grow in the scientific world, is we talk, right? We don't want to stifle anybody's speech or thoughts, because I want to. The research that I've done generates the program that I use with my clients. So if someone has different research that they think is superior, I'd be I want to see it. Like, I'm not scared of it.
Yeah, when we say debate, we don't mean it in the sense because
not a conversational.
Yeah, because what I was saying is like we're gonna have people who are bodybuilders, people who do all this, and I think the friction.
And most fighters we know are still training the way we.
I think
used
the
to
friction
train.
you have is people just being honest about why they're doing their training, right? So there's some girls or people who they just want the aesthetics, and there's nothing wrong with that. I still believe that that's good for you to be doing something active. Like, I don't knock.
You're still healthier than doing nothing.
Listen, absolutely. I promote bodybuilders who are, if you're waking up at 6 a.m. every day and you're prepping your food and you're living a disciplined life, we commend you, right? But I think when you say debate, we want people to be honest about why you're doing this type of training. Are you really going to be a better athlete deadlifting every day? Are you really going to be a better athlete just because you look a certain way?
Are you really going to be healthier?
Yeah, and we're going to take
where it started, but what it really came from is just like, do a little bit of research. Like, just we've got into this, we've lulled ourselves into this false sense of security outside of martial arts. Martial arts is the only thing that exists on the planet where people seek out high-level people, professionals, and
try to find the truth.
You have
different specific disciplines.
Nutritionists here,
because you can't afford to be wrong.
The strength and conditioning coach has melded into this one thing, right? This I do bodybuilding moves, I do strength training moves, I do a little bit of functional.
Some powerlifting moves, a little bit of Olympic lifting.
Like, it just shows that, look, again, like I said, this research is fairly new and not a lot of people are aware of it. And it took me going on a very, very challenged search. I had to actually seek this information out because everything in this world is based around the musculoskeletal system. And when you determine that it is not the priority, you will look at the human body in a different way. And again, I'd be more than happy to explain how I've come to the conclusion that it's not the priority, but
you were saying the fascial system, you said it's the second most sensitive organ?
It's the largest sensory organ in the body. And like, that's what people didn't understand. They used to rip it out and just throw it in the garbage. They called it packing material. This is surgeons.
Yeah, and I've seen it in butcher shops sometimes. It's it's that layer in between skin and muscle, and it's interwoven between the muscle, and
it's different because it bundles muscle, right? So it wraps itself, like when my quadricep, I have 4 bundles of muscles and then intra bundles, and
we sit on the thing in your house.
You can see it, like if you ever look on my Instagram, there's a cross section of a thigh, and you can see like all the bundling of muscle looks like a grapefruit. Well, the reason why it's structured that way is because it's a neural network of information that's telling all these muscles when to fire and what to do, and it's the thing that tells the muscles what to do. And that's when
it's the muscle memory that people always talk about.
You know what's crazy about this?
It's the thing that tells your muscles what to do.
And there's been a domino effect. So I remember training with you and you talking about how important hydration was.
Yeah.
So think about this kick we got on with what type of water we were drinking.
Right.
You started talking about how most of the time it's the tightness in your fascial system that's causing soreness in your back. I'll roll on my quads for 5-10 minutes and I start feeling my neck and back cracking. And like, it just started this domino effect of things that you didn't even have to tell us. We just started.
And it's just looking at the beauty.
If hydration's important for the fascial system, if I'm drinking better and more water, this will also help my fascial system. If I'm sore, maybe I should be rolling my quads out every day instead of
I should be rolling out my fascial system.
Yeah, and it's
like
like
what we focus on, right? And the reason why hydration is so important is because
Kangen guys, I'm telling you,
it's the thing that makes your body more conductive, right? Everything that happens in the human body is an electrical impulse. Everything, like every thought you have, every movement you make is all an electrical impulse. And so if it's an electrical impulse, if you have a hydrated area, well, then you're going to be more conductive because when you have something where there's water,
and the better the water you're hydrated.
When I'm even rolling out at your studio and I'm rolling it out, I'm thinking about those bundles. Like when they're clumped up, it's almost like I'm paving them like smoothly so that it can conduct the message better. So it's like I'm making myself like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
you understand what I'm trying to say?
Exactly what it does.
And the funny thing is, like, as of right now, because me and him aren't UFC world champs, people are going to automatically point to the NFL and all these places where guys are. And I always bring up LeBron James because people always talk about how.
But I feel like the Marinoviches were onto something.
They're actually starting to change over a little bit. You'll see. I actually saw LeBron James doing a move similar to what we.
Well, and he doesn't even know everything you know. But the fact that he stepped away from doing ridiculously heavy lifting,
you'll see most of them are now stepping away from it.
Yeah, it's like
it's especially basketball players.
And so there's always gonna be those world champs.
They get hurt so easily.
What are you thinking? Like you're 7 feet tall and you're lifting putting a bar on your back. Like, that's just ignorant. I'm sorry. I don't care. I don't like to thrash people. But you're no doctor if you say that a 7-foot man, it's okay for them to put a bar on his back.
And just start lifting.
That's just a moronic. That's a moronic.
But you know what? I will say this. Boxers are the best example.
At all then, because it's ridiculous.
Boxers are the best example because they're the one thing we can go through history and I can point out a bunch of guys who do not look like they lift and that'll beat you up.
Yeah.
So like that they've always been a great standard.
You can even look at some wrestlers too.
But now if you look at MMA and if you start looking at who the champs are, and like, you look at Peter Yan. Peter Yan does not look like he touches the weight at all. When Max Holloway was the champ. Israel
and you know what? Conor McGregor really did exactly expose a lot of this stuff. When he got with Ito Portal,
he openly talked about how he doing all this movement stuff.
And I remember even hearing Ito talk about like when you're lifting weights, you're reverse engineering yourself in terms of like being an athlete. You're slowing down the muscle and you're like it's your muscle's supposed to be firing into movements.
I mean, we can go through the list.
It's different.
Anderson Silva.
The muscle, that's the problem.
Anderson Silva, right? John Jones. I think the only guy who looks like he just lifts a bunch and was like promoting CrossFit was George St. Pierre. I think he's the only GOAT. Remember, he's the only GOAT I think you can. The rest of them, they look like John Jones. They look like Anderson Silva. They look like Max Holloway. Ask yourself why that is that these
George
guys
St. Pierre
hit so
literally
hard.
had an interview where he said, "I only do the weightlifting stuff to look good because I want to look good."
See one right there.
He has an interview where
he's
he
the one
said,
guy that looks like a bodybuilder.
It's better for me to, for the marketing.
So you guys are both proof that this system builds muscle because both of you have put on muscle mass since you started training this
I do like the compliments.
And it's a different type of muscle mass,
though. I met
though.
Boyan, he was a little bit skinnier, and now you can actually see.
He actually weighed more, too. He was just more...
Thicc Boy
you can't diet and gain muscle at the same time. You have to have the calories to support the muscle growth.
Agreed.
Right? You can't really diet.
Got to think easy.
You don't have to. You can eat a normal amount of calories. No. You can't diet. You can't lose weight and gain muscle at the same time.
Yeah, I think you can because that's what happened to me. That's what happened to him. I think
can change.
My body composition.
It's the body composition.
I feel like
right?
My weight really didn't change, but I became more V-shaped, and it's better. Of course, it's better to carry more muscle, especially when you're cutting weight. Weight.
Can I say that again?
It's hilarious.
I mean, you can't diet. Right, with reduced calories and gain muscle at the same time.
You know what's hilarious?
You can eat a normal amount of calories, lose body fat, and gain muscle at the same time.
Because you're changing your body composition.
You'll be proud of this because the amount of like physique guys and bodybuilders who will talk about when I post a picture with you about how I look like I'm doing a physique competition, and I'm like, if they saw what we were doing, they probably think we're in there. You have me doing the most crazy lat pulls and
for sure, dude. I've had guys like make jokes and laugh at my Instagram, and that's cool, man. I understand, whatever. It's no big deal.
But you know what's funny? I've yet to have a single
I've
guy.
laughed at people that did stupid shit too, that I thought was stupid, and It's just we have a different perspective because. Well, I'm looking at the body from one perspective, and he's looking at the body from another.
Well, that's why we wanted to pull you into the martial arts world, because that's the best way to humble a critic. If you think your lifting is doing better, when a guy like Boyan tangles you up and picks you up over his head, you get humbled. And this, I watch him do this to guys who are big, strong. He does it to me as well. It's a little humbling. You start asking yourself, how is he not doing deadlifts and picking me up like this? How is he not doing
squats? We just do different kind of deadlifts, that's all. Like, we just do deadlifts in a slightly different way.
Well, his back isn't hurt all the time. He's able to move jiu-jitsu.
We do moving deadlifts that leverage the body in certain areas.
In multiple vectors.
Yeah, and we use different force vectors. So it makes you equal, like it makes you strong. Like I have to, say I have a client and he came in to see me and he was deadlifting quite a bit. And then I asked him to pick up a ball that wasn't really that heavy, and he didn't have such an easy time, and it gave him kind of a new perspective.
Well, because he had to round his back. It's
a different force vector, right? Like different things happen in the human body when you do a deadlift versus picking up a human being.
Yeah, it's
right? And so we have to, if we want to improve in martial arts, we have to duplicate the vectors of force that are being imparted on us during that martial art.
Well, I think just in life, I can attest the same thing you did. When I was at my biggest and strongest and jacked, I was sore all the time. I couldn't touch my toes. And this is when I was in my 20s, right? It's just true, man. And so, like, forget sports, man. For most people, the majority of people who are training are not athletes. So, like, if you look great on your Instagram for that weekend, how do you feel when you go to work that next day and you have to sit at a chair for 8 hours? Most people aren't as lucky as us where we're able to move. Like, you definitely need to be worried if you have a job where you're at a desk all day and you've been deadlifting all weekend. Well, you definitely need to be more careful than guys like us.
If you work, well, first of all, if you sit at a desk all day, then your training program should only include fixing the damage that's sitting at a desk
alone. That alone is killing you.
All your training should, and that doesn't mean that it has to be something like ridiculous. We can have a whole training system, but we have to work on what's called hip extension if you're sitting in hip flexion all the time. So sitting at a desk all day and then going to your gym and doing squats is a bad move, because you're just duplicating that squatting pattern over and over and over, and then you won't be able to extend your hip. And if you can't extend your hips, you're going to have the worst back it's going to be disastrous.
I think the fitness industry has also tricked people into thinking.
I hope I didn't crush anybody's dreams on
No, but I think the fitness industry has tricked people into thinking being sore is part of the game. That like you're like the CrossFit culture.
It's true.
Or even for me, like I used to associate being sore with like, hell yeah, I'm training hard. Like I'd go into practice the next day, not be able to walk, and I'd be like proud of how crappy I felt from my train session.
Yeah. And then I had a good session. You would judge how good the session was, how sore you were at the strength and conditioning.
So you get beat up that day, but in your mind you're like, well, I worked harder yesterday. As you're like getting beat up, and
I'm okay.
But in my mind, I used to associate that with a good workout was I can't move the next day.
But we've just been conditioned that way. Like I was there too, man. Like we've just been conditioned a certain way for the majority of my life, anyways. So like I said, this is a lot of new research, so I don't expect a ton of people to be on board and be like, I'm gonna change minds like overnight. And that's why I like to kind of I urge the conversation, like come and talk. Let's talk about it. I'll be happy to talk to you about it. I've changed tons of very, very secure minds. And
all
it's a good way to say it.
No, they were very secure.
Sure in themselves,
right? They were very sure. And one thing my wife says all the time is she said, just change your perspective.
Yeah.
And so that's when you stop thinking that having tunnel vision and you just change your perspective for a minute, you might see something that's like really miraculous and it really might help you. And that's what happened to me. I just changed my perspective.
Yeah, and guys, right now,
my life changed.
Right now, with a lot of these gyms and stuff being closed, a lot of you guys, this is something we've been talking about, giving you guys these home workouts. A lot of the stuff we're going to be giving you is going to be fascial training system stuff. You're not going to need to go to like a different gym or anything when you're done with this. Like a lot of you guys are only working out at home and stuff. This is going to be the perfect stuff for you to use. Like, find new ways to work out. Because I know for some of you people, if you don't have a gym, like you thought that you couldn't work out.
You definitely don't need a gym.
You do not, man. I'm telling you.
Excel in our system.
And this guy will show you how to do it, man. So make sure to follow your Instagram pages.
You can follow me at QV Fit or Anatomy 6 Health.
Yeah.
Shout out.
The website is anatomy6.com. Like I said, at the bottom of the website, you'll see a documentary on fascia that can kind of give you an entrance into what we're talking about.
Real science.
And Yeah, it's new science. It's newer science. That's what it is. New research. And my mentors always taught me that you have to look for the new research. You can't be complacent and just sit back and be like, all right, I know what I'm doing. And like, no offense, but like, don't look at the Arnold Schwarzenegger thing and it's like, this is the Bible. And like, no, it's not. Even in bodybuilding, I'm really sorry to say, it's not. Like,
he stopped lifting.
I taught bodybuilding for a very long time, and there are far better ways than the Arnold Schwarzenegger Bible.
Well, any bodybuilders that want to watch a good documentary, watch The King about Ronnie Coleman, one of the greatest of all time, and ask yourself, unless you make it to the peak he made it to,
is it worth it?
Are you willing to go?
Because we met him.
Yeah,
and you saw.
A huge fan. I don't want to go too far into what his life is going through. He's on Joe Rogan. Go look at that and make sure you're willing to go through what he's going through without the money, the fame that he acquired, because it is a rude awakening when he brings up the fact that he goes, there's tons of guys like me, none of you guys care because they weren't a world champ. And that really hit me.
And they've had probably how many back surgeries and
tons of guys with CT and fighting, you don't care because they're not a world champ. You should go look into that type of stuff.
If you're not a combat athlete, like going to the gym should never have a risk of losing your ability to walk. And if you go to the gym and you lift weights, I'm really sorry to tell you, especially if you do deadlifts in certain ways, you're risking your ability to walk on a daily basis.
So we're gonna have some more.
That's okay. Like if your ego's cool, you're cool with that with your ego. Hey, then rock on. But just what I don't want is uneducated people to hurt themselves and be like, oh, I wish I would have known.
True.
That's what I don't want. And so I'm not trying to knock or thrash people. Unless you teach 60-year-olds to do deadlifts, then you should be ashamed of yourself.
Oh, well, that's a whole percentage you just offended. But
I don't care. That one I don't care. Like a 60-year-old person doesn't need to lift 200 pounds ever in their life. That's ridiculous.
I actually agree. All right,
this doesn't make any sense.
We're going to have links to, so thickboyfightclub.com is dropping this week. We're going to have links to his page. We're going to have him doing workouts for you guys. We're going to give you guys workouts that you guys can do in your like living room, because that's kind of where most people are trained now anyway. So make sure to check out his Instagram page, his website.
Anatomy 6 Health. Remember Anatomy 6 Health?
We're going to have a link to his stuff. ThickBoyFightClub.com is dropping this week. Once again, thank you to everybody for the support. The hoodie sales are going great. We got boxing gloves coming soon. So be on the lookout for that. And just thank you, Adam, for coming. You've been amazing, changing my career and overall health. And
yeah, thank you for all my success. I mean, I went 3-0 in 2019, and a lot of that you were a big part of that.
Thank you so much.
So
I really appreciate that a lot. Like I said, I just want to make better humans all around.
Awesome. All right, guys, remember to train hard and think easy.
Thicc gang.